welcome back to the Spector Creative channel. I'm your host, Scott Toy Guru Neitlich, and like I do as often as I can, I like to reach deep into the mailbag and answer fans' questions. The postman may ring twice, but people on the comments board leave comments daily. So let's jump in. So, Mitch Com asked, how, or rather, what do I think about the process of grading action figures? All right, so, to talk about that, we first have to talk about what we do with action figures. And obviously, children play with action figures, but as adults, we display action figures. We display action figures in lots of ways. We display them as collections with other characters from the same brand. We display them as juxtaposition between brands, often for humor or to possibly make a statement about how we feel. We also keep them in cases and bins, usually with easy access so that we could get to any figure in our collection whenever we want. Again, for a reason of control. Well, then why do we sometimes take our figures and encase them in hard plastic with barcodes and labels in a way that we can never access the figure again? We do this both with carded figures and with loose figures, old figures, new figures, blue fish, red fish, yellow fish, kosher fish. The point is, grading action figures has become a big trend in the hobby over the last 20 years or so, and it definitely changes a lot about both the hobby itself and the actual action figure as a representation of pop culture. So let's talk about this. Well, obviously grading is not something limited to action figures. Grading has been done with collectibles for a long time. You can grade sports cards, you can grade comic books, everything from the first appearance of Superman to the last appearance of Superman. Okay, until they brought him back to life. But the point is, people grade action figures the way they grade other collectibles, or at least that's why they're motivated to. Part of it is to know exactly what you have, whether it's mint or not so much, and to have a number assigned to this. Obviously, it's also done to increase the value for resale. When you're selling an action figure on eBay, you're more likely to get a much, much higher price when it's graded because the buyer knows also exactly what they're getting. Even a vintage figure that's going to go for a high amount of money, when that figure has now been graded, it's going to go for an even higher amount of money. And I know I'm not apples to apples with Luke to Leia here, but I'm using it as an example. Bear with me. All right, so point being, we grade things to know their value, to have a sense of ownership, to know exactly what we own, and potentially to resell it. We also do this to display things, and comic books and trading cards fall into this category very much so because they are essentially art. A trading card is a small piece of art, a comic book is a slightly larger piece of art. Yes, a comic book contains more art beyond the cover, but thanks to trade paperbacks, we can access that. And mounting things on walls is something collectors are big on too, and it's not limited to flat pieces of paper like trading cards or comic books. So mounting a graded action figure is absolutely something that falls in line with the behaviors of the adult collector. But what I really want to get into is how encasing a figure in a graded takes away from the essence of the figure. What I mean by that is, here's an action figure of Spider-Man, right? Okay, we can't in real life tell Spider-Man what to do. And don't tell me Spider-Man's a fictional character, I don't want to hear about that. But we don't have any control over what Spider-Man does in the movies or the comic books. But, as an action figure, and I've stated this in a few videos, we as the adult collector have absolute control over the character. We can pose Spider-Man any way we want, next to whoever we want. He can be next to Captain America or Batman. It doesn't matter who owns the IP. As a collector, we own it. When you put a figure behind glass, or encased in a plastic, case, it becomes art more or less. And obviously, superheroes and pop art have been combining for decades. And I'm in no way, saying that this doesn't happen in other media. You are going to see lots of examples of pop culture and art. You're going to see action figures that literally are designed just to be art. Like this pop example, this is not what Spider-Man looks like, it's an interpretation. Or art of action figures as photography is a big trend that's really emerged in the past few years, with a lot of very prominent photographers taking on action figures as the media or medium, and you can even buy artwork turned into an action figure, like this Thinker statue that is available, or David or Venus de Milo, articulated just like Spider-Man is. So the merging of art and action figures is not at all limited to displaying them on your wall or having them encased in a graded acrylic piece of plastic. There are lots of examples of how action figures and art combine. In fact, action figures and toys aren't limited to the action figure category. There's lots of categories that combine art and play. All right, so with that as a baseline, I want to look at then how action figures and pop culture and art not only play off each other and transcend, like with the example of Caw, and if you're not familiar with it, it's a sort of Mickey Mouse-esque pop culture character that is transcended art and toys, and how encasing an action figure like this in a graded case takes away from the fact that it's an action figure. And I think a lot of this has to do with how we see ourselves as collectors. Those of us who are adult collectors want to have total control over everything in our collection. And that includes being able to preserve it, being able to display it. Essentially, we want to be the owners of a museum, and we want to feel like everything in our collection, from the smallest item to the biggest, the least valuable to the most,
that belongs in a museum.
And we can't all be the Lucasfilm headquarters and have space to display all of our items, because a lot of us are limited to a room or a man cave or a woman cave or whatever we call the our office, as I like to call it. That's how I get away with it. And we don't have limited space, or unlimited space, if you will. We have limited space. So, we can't just, put every single thing in an acrylic case. Like I said, Lucasfilm can do this because they own a giant building. And yes, I know, I got carried away taking photos when I was touring it. Can you blame me, please? All right, the point being is that we have limited space, but we still want to treat our collection with the utmost care and importance. And in the end, we do see ourselves as museum owners. Our collection is our museum collection. We want to be able to display it in the most sort of fanciful and sort of rich way. And by taking the figures and encasing them in a graded plastic case, for lack of a better word, it preserves the figure in a museum quality state, which reinforces the importance of our collection and the value of our collection and the emotional meaning. But at the same time, it takes away from the actual action figure-ness of the object. Spider-Man is no longer an action figure. You can no longer play with him or pose him. He's now in a stationary place forever. Now he's become art. And in doing this, does it then take away from the fact that it's an action figure? Is it no longer an action figure, but it's now art, untouchable and forever on display? A piece of pop culture we can look at and admire, but never interact with, never feel control over, just regard it. What do you think? Why do we grade action figures other than for value and resale? Are action figures art? Do they have to be encased in carbonite to be art, or can just a loose display be art? Love to know your thoughts in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.